kidding me? How much? Interesting. Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol Ped, and welcome to my first new video of 2024, even though I've put a couple out, but I recorded those last year. I wanted to make this video for a while. I'm not the first by any means to make a video on this subject, but it's one that I've found really interesting over the last probably few months. I've had many of you reach out to me and ask if I was going to do a video on it. And I guess I did do a film at the back end of last year about just the crazy prices of new cars. And I asked the question how a normal person on a normal salary could get into some of the cars that I review when they are, you know, cheap cars. New cars these days are £40,000-50,000, which is a huge amount of money. So one of the things I'm going to aspire to do this year is review more affordable cars, whether that's brand new cars coming to market, or I'm going to start doing a lot more on what I would call new stroke partially used cars. So within a year old, maybe an ex-demonstrator, the kind of car that I've always bought. I've never bought a new car. But what I wanted to do a video on was just the change in the car market in the last few months. Since COVID, I guess, we've seen this boom in car prices, both new cars being more and more expensive, but also used cars holding their value much more, and in quite a lot of cases actually used cars being sold for more than they were sold new, going over list price, which for some manufacturers, if it's a particularly premium manufacturer or if it's a very limited edition or a very sought after car, I kind of understand. But that was happening for fairly normal cars. You know, one of the things I have as someone who creates content about cars is I get lots and lots of messages, DMs and comments in videos and so on. And plenty of people were saying that they'd had a car, even something, a normal family car like a VW Golf or a BMW 3 Series. And they were being called up by their manufacturer, by their dealer, and saying, look, you would like to buy your car off you, and being offered more than they bought it for, or have run the car for a year and pretty much selling it for what they bought it for. Even companies like WeBuyAnyCar.com and Motorway were making offers to people on cars that were just unbelievable, really. And for me, and I'm sure many of you, that was just never a sustainable thing. I could not see that would carry on. And what we've started to see is a rebalance in the car market. Now, I want to kind of start this off by saying I am by no means an expert in buying and selling cars. But what I am is someone who spends a lot of time on Autotrader looking at cars, and I talk to a lot of people in the car trade, and I kind of do understand things. So this if you like, almost a bubble that we saw post-COVID was driven by a number of things, as far as I'm aware. It was driven by a shortage of new cars. And that shortage of new cars was driven in turn by things like the semiconductor chip shortage that we saw after COVID, the general availability of materials, and things like lockdowns affecting production during and post-COVID. Conflicts in the war like Ukraine. It was amazing how many manufacturers had their wiring looms and other components manufactured in Ukraine. And that put massive strain on lead times. And we saw lead times of new cars. You know, there was a day not that many years ago where you could walk into a dealership of most manufacturers, order a car, and you'd probably get the car within a few weeks, maybe a few months. And now it's fairly common practice to order a car and have to wait 12 months, 18 months. I had a comment from somebody on the channel recently who'd ordered a new Porsche and they were still waiting 2 years later. It's just unbelievable. And what that meant was people were maybe looking at, rather than buying a new car, going into the used car market. And we started to see this almost artificial inflation of used car prices. And that meant maybe some people were either given a false expectancy, if you like, of what their values would be. It certainly helped with things like finance residuals. and we saw plenty of cars being sold for over list price. What's happened in the last maybe 3 to 6 months is a slight balancing, I think. Firstly, we've seen an interest rate increase, which has meant that the finance models that people were looking at, where it was maybe 2, 3, 4% APR on a finance deal, now we're looking at maybe 10, 11, 12%. I know there are some special deals out there which I might talk about in a little while, but that has maybe meant that people aren't looking at using or moving from car to car as quickly. Maybe they're keeping hold of their car a little bit more. And what we've seen is a dramatic shift in the price of cars. And we're starting to see some fairly large drops in the value of used cars, and even manufacturers like Porsche and Ferrari offering discounts at main dealer level, which has just been unheard of. So that kind of got me thinking, because I've got my Porsche. I will have had that amazingly come the summer 2 years. And it was my dream car. It cost me £62,000, and I have it on a PCP finance deal with a very good rate, an APR rate from Lillian Stanley Finance. I think I'm paying about 2.8%, something ridiculous like that. And one of the things that started to get me worried stroke interested is when I bought the car, one of the reasons I chose the Porsche Boxster that I did was that the confidence I had that the residuals would be quite good, that car was likely to keep its value, and I was likely to maybe at the end of the deal still have a lot of money in the car. I could either choose to buy something else or pay off the finance or refinance the car and keep the car. One of the worries I've seen in the last 3 months or so is starting to think, well, maybe Porsche are being hit by this reassessment or re-evaluation of the car market just as badly as some other brands. And you kind of get onto Autotrader and start to have a look. But it also means that some cars that would have been maybe unattainable 3 to 6 months ago are not quite so ridiculous now. So I've been playing with Autotrader. Now, many of you might be aware, but there is a Google Chrome plugin that you can download onto your computer when you're on Autotrader, and it shows you what the price changes are for each of the cars that you're looking at. And it's quite interesting. So what I'm going to do in this video is, first up, I want to talk about my Porsche and what my plans or thoughts are. Firstly, do I think it's dropped in value? But secondly, if I were to change it, what kind of things might I look at, and how might that look? And has that changed because of this kind of resettling of the car market? I'm then going to go and have a look at a couple of cars that really are major bargains if you look at what's happened in the last 3 to 6 months. And then right at the end of the video, there's a couple of cars that are my absolute hero cars I would love to own, and the depreciation or the re-evaluation of their value that's happened in the last 3 months is unreal. So I need my goggles on for this one, I'm afraid. So let's jump on to Autotrader. All I've done is a national search for 718 Boxster GTS, and I've filtered out the 4-litre GTS as well. So we're just looking at the 2.5-litre 4-pot GTS, and I've also done this video is not sponsored by Autotrader, by the way. It's just a platform that I use a lot, and it's a really great way to demonstrate the things that I want to look at. So I've also sorted by relevance. I'm just going to do a lowest price first. Now, one of the things you might have to be a little bit careful when you do lowest price first, and I'm looking at cars nationally as well, is that some of the cars that are really cheap may well be insurance categorized, so Cat D or something along those lines. So you have to be a little bit careful of that. My Porsche, by the way, has just shy of 19,000 miles on it, and it's a 2020 GTS model. So here's an interesting one. Straight away, lowest price found, just under £50,000 for the same year as my car. A little bit more mileage, so, you know, sort of 12,000 miles more. But this car, first advertised on the 10th of the 8th, 2023, for £64,500, has now nearly £15,000 less. That looks like a car that they are struggling to sell. But that also worries me, because that's like 50 grand. If we just scroll down, this one may be a little bit more representative. I'm not so keen on the wheels on this one. Again, it's a 2020 car because I think I filtered 2020. 25,000 miles. And again, that one's dropped £5,000 in value. I think you get the idea. This one here, lower mileage than mine, £56,000. I'm not going to go through all the details of the spec and so on, but that car actually looks very, very similar to mine. But even that, since it was first advertised way back on the 26th of the 10th last year, that's dropped £6,000. So I think it's safe to say my car has probably dropped a fair bit. I would estimate somewhere in the low 50s, I think, when I bought it for 62, which is annoying. However, what that also allows me to do is think, I wonder if so when I bought mine, the car I would really want to buy was a Porsche 718 Spyder. So it got me thinking, let's have a look at how much Spyders have come down, because when I bought my car, you'd struggle to get a Spyder for, well, kind of high 90s probably. But there are some really, really nice cars in here. Again, I've done the lowest first at one, but this is a rather nice one. 9,000 miles, £78,000. But again, that's dropped £4,500 since it was first advertised at the end of November last year. So not very long ago at all. One owner, full history. It's a little bit older than mine, but Miami blue, one of my favourite colours. What's that? I'm not a big kind of, that's probably a bit too out there, a bit too red for me. This one looks quite nice. Look, that's only changed. Oh, actually, in fact, that one's gone up. Wow. £80,000, £81,000. This one's dropped £5,000 since it was advertised at the back end of October last year. So a Spyder suddenly starts to be, it would still be a big stretch for me, and monthlies would be a lot more than they are currently. I think I currently pay about £600 a month. So I would imagine my monthlies would be going up with the APR change, probably £800-900 a month. So I could do it, whether or not I would want to do it, but these Spyders have come down a lot. Another car that I would love to get into one day is a GT4. The only challenge with the GT4 is it has a roof. I do like my my soft top motoring, but I've done the lowest price first. I've searched 718 Cayman GT4. No filters on things like price or anything, but some of these, oh my days, look at this one here. A 2020 car, 8,300 miles, and since it was advertised in October last year, it's already dropped £11,500. That looks like a private seller. Yeah, it is a private seller, can't get rid of that one. Another private seller, it's dropped £7,000. Just under 12,000 mile car, 2020, for £74,000. Again, these were up when I bought mine, up in the high 80s, early 90s probably for a 718. And I haven't done a search for its predecessor, because I would reckon you could probably get into one of those now for, I don't know, probably the same as I paid for my car. But a 718 GT4, that is a proper car. Look at this one. What a stunning spec that one is. Again, less than 8,000 miles, 2020 car. It's dropped £6,000 since it was first advertised. Look, it was up at £81,000. Really, really interesting. So they're the two Porsches. I think, oh, okay, this rebalancing the market may not be too bad then. But I guess you kind of lose on my car, but the car I want to buy comes down as well. So actually, in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not dissimilar. If I wanted to get into an electric Porsche, Taycans have taken an absolute killing. And there's no surprise there. I think a lot of EVs, and I'm not going to talk so much about EVs in this video, but there's been a lot of EVs come onto the used market. A lot of these are probably going through auction, actually. You speak to dealers and they're getting lots of EVs in part exchange for petrol or diesel cars. And maybe there's a separate video for me to do on that one. But Taycans, for me, of all EVs I've driven, they are stunning things. They drive like a Porsche, and they are probably the best engaging driver's EV you can buy. But some of them, oh my days, there's some good value to be had out there. Let me move down here, look. Sort of 50 grand for a Taycan. Some of these have got sort of reasonably high miles, 20, 30,000 miles on the clock. 60 or 51. This one's dropped by 4 grand. So there's some good bargains to be had out there if you wanted to get into a Taycan. But maybe the bargain to be had if you did want to get into an EV, a Tesla. Again, I've done a search here for a Model Y. If you do a similar search for a Model 3, there are even better bargains to be had for a Model 3. Now, a couple of things are going to affect Tesla. First of all, I've done the lowest first, and the first two here are Category S insurance cars, so I wouldn't touch those. But this one here, so this is a Model Y, long range, the car I would want to buy, 2022 car with just under 20,000 miles on the clock. It's already moved 4.5 grand since it was advertised in December, so not very long ago. And now it's £35,500. The Model Ys at one point, not that long ago, were in the 50s. I know Tesla dropped the price a lot across their range for 3 and Y. But if you wanted to get into EV and you weren't a company car buyer and you weren't going to put it through a salary sacrifice scheme or something, you're a private private buyer, you can't go far wrong, in my view, buying a Tesla Model Y for 35 grand. I mean, there's plenty of them. This one's 36 grand, 36 grand. You know, with less than 10,000 miles on it, this one. That's unbelievable. Not from a Tesla dealer, but from a car dealer, so you might get warranty from them and so on. So that makes Tesla Model Y really, really interesting. Look, 3.5 grand off, 3.5 grand off, just since November last year. Unreal. 3.5 grand off. The change in the market is proper scary if you're a Tesla Model Y owner. So those are a couple of examples if you did want to get into the world of EV. If you didn't, so next one I wanted to talk about was if you saw my end of year review, my car of the year last year that I drove was the BMW M2, the new one. Now they start, you have to be a little bit careful in terms of how much spec you put on them. But if you start looking now at used BMW M2s, I'll ignore this top one because it's a Cat S, but this one, look, 3,000 miles, 2023 car. They only came out last year. It was first advertised at the end of October in 2023. It's already dropped £6,800. Targa Floria, by the way, that's a dealership not that very far from me. Brilliant, brilliant used car dealership. Nice spec, 3,000 miles. That 55,000, well, just under 56,000 quid. That's a lot of car for £56,000. Here's another one, £56,000 with just under 4,000 miles on the clock. This one's dropped 8 grand, and it's from a BMW dealer. This one, just under £57,000, less than 4,000 miles. It's dropped 8 grand since the back end of October. £8,000. 9 nearly. So if you wanted to get into an M2, don't buy a new one, just go and buy a used one. That is if you're going 56, 57,000 pounds for an M2. Now again, I'm not going to delve into the spec. I guess if you've got one with the carbon pack and those lovely carbon seats, then you're going to be paying more. But even with the comfort seats and a lower spec, that is a lot of car for 55,000 quid. And that, for me, that starts to make these kind of cars more interesting. There's an argument to say, how much are they going to carry on moving? Are you going to be hit with depreciation if you bought it at that kind of money? But someone's taken an £8,000 bath on that car, and I'm glad it wasn't me. So I think M2, very, very interesting. I could do this all day, but there's a few cars. I thought I would go into some really ridiculous hypercar, supercar territory, and just have a look at some of the unbelievable changes. So, still one of the best supercars I've ever driven was a Maserati MC20 Cello. I've had a search for just the MC20, and these are eye-watering numbers. So let me show you this one. 2021 car with less than 2,000 miles on the clock, so barely running. First advertised on the 20th of March 2023 for £205,000. It's come down £41,000 and it's still not sold. 41 grand. So it's now 164,000 quid. This one's come down, that's 165 anyway, come down £5,000. This one here, look, again, less than 2,000 miles on the clock, it's come down £46,000. Now, when I reviewed those cars new, there were loads of comments saying they're going to depreciate like a stone dropped into a swimming pool. And they have dropped a lot, but I tell you what, for 167,000 quid, that is a lot of car. This one's dropped £10,000. This one, I mean, the spec of that, look at that yellow, that is absolutely beautiful. 320 miles on the clock. And it's been dropped by, it was originally advertised at £207,000. It's now £175,000. Unbelievable. So if you want yourself a Maserati MC20, there you go. There's the bargain. You can thank me later. Next up, Ferrari. Ferrari 296 GTB, absolute rocket ship of a car. Unbelievable. They, however, when you spec them up, they can be quite pricey. So this one, it's got the Assetto Fiorano pack. So basically the lightweight, beautiful interior. It's got a fairly subtle exterior. This was first advertised on the 19th of March for £320,000, give or take a few quid, and it's now up for 230. It's dropped £90,000. That is a Ferrari dropping £90,000 from Rybrook as well, so a well-known dealer. Here's another 296 GTB. This one, since October last year, has dropped 30,000 quid. These are Ferraris dropping money here. This one here, again, when was it first advertised? The 10th of October. It's dropped nearly £40,000 since then. That's 14%. It's only got 1,000 miles on the clock. This one's 34,000. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. So if it can happen to Ferrari, it can happen to anybody. So spurred on by this, I thought, I know, for my last car, I'm basically going to have a look at my two dream cars that I would love, both from Stuttgart. First up, the 992 GT3. When it came out, you couldn't get one. You had to have bought 10 or more Porsches from your local dealer to get a build slot. And now there are a load of them on sale. 44 cars currently on sale on Autotrader, 992 GT3. Absolutely superb car. Bulletproof depreciation, apparently. They were selling for overs not that long ago. Again, I've done lowest first, but £165,000. That one's dropped £3,000 since the end of November last year. How about this one? Ouch, 165,500 quid. First advertised 29th of the 8th last year. It's dropped £30,000 since then. That's a 992 GT3. There are loads, and that one's dropped £25,000 from HRO in as well. This one's dropped £30,000. And it's got satin PPF, it's got Club Sport, lift, and it's 170 grand. And it's done 7,800 miles. It's nothing. Unreal. And that for me, if I was to really, this one, a GT3 dropped £15,000. Wow. Now, the problem with the GT3 is it doesn't have a roof you can drop. So I'm going to finish up with I've always loved a 911 Turbo S Cabriolet. The 992 Turbo S Cabriolet is a complete rocket ship with no roof. And they were well over 200,000 quid. I've seen them advertised in sort of 6 months ago or so. And I've gone on here and there's a few absolute belters on here. First up, how many cars? 43 cars with my filter. So this one I thought was quite interesting. 145 grand now for a 2020 car with just under 13,000 miles on the clock. It's dropped £10,000 since December. This one, wow, £150,000, 3,000 miles on the clock. Beautiful spec, and that's dropped £32,000 since June. £150,000, 4,500 miles on the clock, stunning spec, 992 Turbo S. Honestly, I just think that would be my perfect car. And at 150 grand, it's a lot of money, don't get me wrong, and I'm not going to go out and buy one tomorrow, but 150 grand's way more palatable than 200 grand. And that's the state we're in. So, you know, if you want some fun, if you're a bit bored, you know, the weather's a bit cold, you don't want to go outside, download that Google Chrome plugin. I'll put a link in the description below to help you out, and go on to Autotrader and just have a look. It's a really fun game to see if you can find the car that's been dropped in price the most. But which of those cars that I've just gone through would you like? The big question is, what's going to happen to my Porsche this year? At the moment, I have no plans to sell it whatsoever. But I think what I'll probably do is just wait another 3 months or so just to see what happens to interest rates, for example, and just keep an eye on things. But to get into a Turbo S Cabriolet or a 718 Spyder, that'd be good. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that one. If you have, give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol Ped for plenty more content to come. And I'll see you on the next film. You take care, guys. Drive safe.